Calvin Stroud, certified Region 4, Lindenwood University.
On Friday, October 27th, 1553, Michael Servetus was burned alive along with his heretical writings in Geneva, Switzerland. Before he met his demise, he cried out, "O Jesus, Son of eternal God, have pity on me." The order of the words forming his appeal to Jesus was slightly off what they should have been. "O Jesus, eternal Son of God," is what he should have said to avoid challenging the Orthodox Trinitarian doctrine. A culture of religious intolerance, violence, and compulsion was at the root of the actions of both religious and secular authority in Geneva at the time of his execution. Yet, when the decision of the tribunal is evaluated within a broader historical context, it is revealed that the underlying fear of social chaos and religious disunity were also key factors that led to his death. In order to put the execution of Servetus in its proper historical, theological, and political perspective, a few points about religious compulsion and violence must be made. In the 13th century, the death penalty became the official punishment for heresy in the law codes of the Holy Roman Empire, many regions of Italy, and the Kingdom of Sicily. These laws were passed in part to prevent the chaos that followed the emergence of religious dissidents. This is apparent from the writings of Thomas Aquinas, whose stance on killing heretics was similar to that of these secular authorities. He wrote, "They deserve not only, quote, they deserve not only to be separated from the church by excommunication, but also to be severed from the world by death." However, the heretics could avoid death if they recanted their beliefs and performed penance. The response of Martin Luther to the massive German peasant rebellions of 1524 and 26 is another example of a prominent theologian supporting violence in the face of church disunity and social chaos. In a piece called "Against the Murdering and Robbing Hordes of Peasants," Luther said these peasants, quote, "merited death in body and soul," unquote. Luther supported violence when faced with an extreme threat to social and religious authority. In 1546, John Calvin and Michael Servetus came into contact with each other through a publisher in France. Calvin sent Servetus a copy of his Institutes of the Christian Religion, which was returned to him by Servetus with critical remarks filling the margins. Calvin's reaction to this criticism was captured in a letter to Guillaume Farel. "Servetus recently sent me with his letters a volume of his writings. If he came to Geneva, as far as my authority goes, I would not let him leave alive." Although the language used in the letter reveals Calvin's frustration, it should not be thought of as anything more than an angry letter to a trusted old friend. The correspondence between Calvin and Servetus ceased in the late 1540s. In September of 1541, John Calvin arrived in Geneva for the first time. He started reorganizing the church and redefining its autonomy in relation to temporal power immediately after his arrival. Calvin and his supporters presented the ordinances of a new religious court, the consistory, to the secular governing body of Geneva, the council. The purpose of this court was to act as the first line of defense against immoral acts committed by the Genevan faithful. This court could pass three types of judgment. First, the accused was given severe warnings. Second, the accused was excommunicated. And third, if the case was severe enough, they were referred up to the council, the secular governing body of the Genevan city. The influence of the consistory permeated most aspects of daily life of the Genevans. Take the case of a pack saddler named Jacques Aymon, who was summoned to render an account of his faith on March 30th, 1542. Jacques admitted that he had not fully memorized the Lord's Prayer. The consistory advised Jacques to practice saying the prayer and find a teacher to help him learn the meaning of the words. They also advised him to stay closer to the pulpit at sermons. Until Jacques could demonstrate that he had proved his ability to recite the Lord's Prayer and render a better account of his faith, he was refused communion. Other indications of the strict outlook of the church in Geneva came from the stringent religious ordinances of 1546. In these ordinances, all members of every household were required to attend sermons on Sundays. Also, anyone found fornicating when unmarried was jailed for 6 days and forced to live off bread and water. The environment of religious compulsion described previously paints a picture of how strict and rigid Genevan religious life was in the time of Calvin. In his Institutes of the Christian Religion, Calvin touched on the subjects of church discipline, excommunication, tasks of the civil government, and other topics that pertain to religious compulsion. All members of the church must live by the guidelines of spiritual authority and lead a disciplined life. If a member was not following the guidelines, they were working against the church. Calvin insisted that the faithful members were at risk of corruption if they came into contact with any dissenters who refused to follow the church rules. If the evildoer refused to recant their unorthodox beliefs, excommunication was prescribed. Calvin then defined the role of civil government in relation to religious matters. God ordains the magistrates, but they must be careful not to use force and excess. Calvin then explains, quote, "It is indeed bad to live under a prince of whom nothing is permitted, but much worse under one by whom everything is allowed." He proclaimed that execution should only be used in extreme emergencies, quote, "lest we slide down from discipline to butchery." The fact that Servetus was executed at the behest of Calvin in 1553 makes this quote look like a hypocritical statement. However, the statement does not completely rule out execution. It simply stated that authorities should exercise great caution when deciding on the punishment of religious dissenters. From this murky statement of the Institutes, it is unclear whether Calvin supported execution or not. Perhaps it is made clear by being unclear that execution was not ruled out completely. The execution of Servetus takes on a whole new level of importance and severity after reading Calvin's urge for precaution on occasions when punishment is necessary. Servetus was on the run from French religious authorities until August 1553, 2 months before death, when he was identified and arrested in Geneva. The council was called to hear his case, and Calvin, notice it went straight from, skipped the consistory, went straight to the council. And Calvin and some of the other ministers were invited to the interrogations to present religious questions to Servetus in front of the secular judges. Servetus composed several stirring petitions from his prison cell, and one was a plea for religious liberty, in which he wrote, "It is a serious matter, quote, it is a serious matter to kill men because they are in error of some question of scriptural interpretation, when we know that the very elect may be led astray." The council was unmoved by his petition and many others, and they condemned Servetus to death. Sentenced on 1553, the statement read, quote, "that you have tried to make a schism and trouble the church of God, by which many may have been ruined and lost, a thing horrible, shocking, scandalous, and infectious. So you shall finish your days and give an example to others who commit the like." As the Geneva Council stated during the trial, Servetus was an infection that needed to be contained. The execution was carried out to prevent the spread of heretical ideas and save the souls of the people with whom he might come into contact. The council condemned Servetus to death for writing books against heretical ideas, but there were likely other factors that affected their decision. If the trial was placed on a continuum encompassing the entire history of religious persecution, the affair seems to be the end result of a long process. However, there are few reasons why the Servetus trial stands out in this continuum. For one, Servetus was not violent and showed no signs of revolutionary motives like the peasants Luther condemned in the rebellions of 1524 and 26. There is no evidence that Servetus wanted to kill anyone by his own hands or overthrow the established government in Geneva, or anywhere else for that matter. Nor did he wish to break with any established churches. It is known that Servetus had an extremely unfortunate accident during his childhood that made it physically impossible for him to have sex. He wasn't violent, he wasn't schismatic, so what was so dangerous about this abstinent heretic? Servetus' beliefs contradicted the fundamental teachings of both Protestants and Catholics, and truthfully every other established Orthodox religion at that time. He was an outcast in a time when the religious factions of Europe were trying to consolidate themselves into streamlined confessions. Also, his trial took place in the intolerant city of Geneva, where John Calvin was the frontrunner. The city of Geneva was set up so the secular and religious authorities had supreme control over the population. The goal of the authorities was to maintain a unified Christian society with the consistory regulating the morals of the faithful. in the council, protected the people with the sword. Furthermore, Servetus was branded a heretic, which meant that he was associated with the preconceived notions that accompanied such a label. He was the rotten limb that the surgeon needed to remove to secure the well-being of the rest of the body. Servetus was executed not only for his beliefs, but also because he was a heretic, and therefore seen as a threat to church unity and a harbinger of social chaos. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for a couple of 3 questions, a couple of minutes worth. Anybody?
I have a question. What sort of influence was his teaching, Servetus' teachings having over time?
It's so hard to pinpoint him. He was from Spain. He was born in Spain in 1511, and in Spain in 1511, you still had some Jewish influence, and you still had some Muslim influence. So historians and theologians have drawn a lot of his views from that. He also wrote a letter to a Genevan minister in 1547 that called the Trinitarian doctrine a three-headed Servetus, and you can see how this really ticked off some people. So we also comment on good works occasionally. So perhaps the Catholic influence for his Spanish upbringing, but by the end of his life, he was very apocalyptic in his writings and just so far off in the established orthodoxy that it's so hard to tell what he was thinking. Yeah. So.
The city of Geneva, are there maybe more radical leaders in there than John Calvin? John Calvin seems, through your presentation, to seem a little bit moderate in the way he would actually deal with punishment. Are there other figures that are far more cut and dry with the way they wanted to treat these kind of sins?
Yeah, that's a good question, because a lot of biased and not very good historians will place John Calvin as the guy who lit the match and put it right under Servetus' plagues.
Say that again, he places him as what?
Places him as the executioner, which is just ridiculous. Actually, Servetus and his supporters didn't even have a majority in the governing body in 1553 when this happened. So there was a lot of people on either side of him, more extreme, less extreme, and one thing that they all agreed on was that Servetus was so far off in his beliefs that he deserved to die for them. Calvin agreed with them, but as you saw from the quote from the Institutes, he was very cautious when prescribing death as the punishment. So yes, there were people more extreme and people less extreme.
Could you read the first contrasting sentence you said when they were about to burn? You should have said eternal.
Yeah.
I didn't catch all that because there was hammering back here.
Right. Yeah.
Say that again.
Yeah, he said, supposedly right before they lit the match, "O Jesus, Son of eternal God, have pity on me."
Yeah.
What he should have said was, "O Jesus, eternal Son of God." And that was one of the
Gotcha.
things that really got him into trouble throughout his journeys and writings and stuff. He denied the Trinitarian doctrine, and that's not known for just about anyone he would have talked to.